Welcome to QHSE Talks, the world's largest QHSE audio knowledge hub. Subscribe and be part of the movement.
Welcome back to QHSE Talks, and welcome to Episode 5 in our series on how to build safety culture and safety leadership. Across this series, we've been breaking down what it really takes to lead safely, not just through rules and checklists, but through understanding people, systems, and the decisions that connect them. And today's topic might be the most important one yet, because this time we're going inside the human mind. We're talking about human failures and decision-making, the science behind why even skilled, experienced, well-trained people still make mistakes and sometimes even break the rules that are meant to keep them safe. Now, when something goes wrong, we often hear the phrase, "It was human error." But what does that actually mean? Was it a slip of action, a lapse of memory, a mistaken assumption, or a deliberate violation? Because until we know which kind of failure it was, we can't fix what caused it. In this episode, we'll use the framework from HSG 48, Reducing Error and Influencing Behavior, to map out exactly how human failure happens. We'll look at errors, those unintentional actions that come from slips, lapses, or mistaken judgments, and violations, the deliberate deviations from rules or procedures that often grow out of culture, pressure, or flawed systems. Understanding that difference is the first step toward real safety leadership, because it's not about asking who messed up. It's about asking, what set them up to fail? Was it a training issue, a design problem, a cultural norm that quietly told people the rule doesn't really matter? Then, we'll shift gears into decision-making, the process that underpins every action on site and every policy in the boardroom. We'll explore how people make choices under certainty, risk, and uncertainty, how rational thought, limited information, and gut instinct all collide when pressure is high. And we'll dig into the biases that creep into those decisions. Overconfidence, confirmation bias, sunk cost thinking, all the mental shortcuts that can trip up even the smartest, most experienced leaders. So whether you're a supervisor, a safety manager, or a director shaping organizational culture, this episode will give you a toolkit to diagnose what really went wrong, understand how people think, and design systems that support better choices. Because building a strong safety culture starts with understanding human behavior, and great safety leadership begins when you stop blaming people and start learning from them.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're going to walk through first this taxonomy of human failure, really break down errors and violations. Then we'll pivot into the mechanics of making good decisions. And finally, the really juicy part, those cognitive traps, the biases that can trip up even the smartest leaders.
Right.
Let's start with the basics, the foundational structure, because this gives us like two main avenues for looking into any incident.
It's a critical first step. This framework, you see it referenced a lot in safety guidelines. HSG 48 Figure 1 is a good example. It splits all human failures into two big buckets, errors and violations.
Errors and violations, okay.
And getting this distinction right is, well, it's everything for diagnosis. An error fundamentally is unintentional. It's an action or maybe a decision that you didn't mean to get wrong.
So you didn't intend for the failure to happen.
Precisely. It could be a slip up in doing something or maybe a flaw in your plan. Often comes down to, lack of attention or maybe misapplying something you thought you knew. It's a failure of capability, really.
Okay. And then the other side, violations.
Violations are different. These are deliberate deviations. You're intentionally breaking established rules, procedures, instructions.
And these rules aren't just bureaucratic nonsense, right? They're there for a reason.
Usually, yeah. They're designed for safety, for efficiency. So choosing to ignore them is a conscious act.
That distinction feels huge for a leader.
Oh, it is. Because think about the implications. If you diagnose an error and an unintentional slip, you're dealing with capability, right? Or maybe cognitive load.
So this fix is different.
Completely. Your solution becomes structural. Maybe you need to reduce distractions, improve the training, add physical safeguards, redesign the workflow. You're basically managing the fact that human brains aren't perfect.
But if it's a violation?
Now you're looking at something else entirely. Motivation, maybe? Or the workplace culture. Or some kind of systemic pressure that made breaking the rules seem like the logical or maybe even the only option at that moment.
So the investigation goes in a total different direction.
Totally. Why did that person choose to deviate? What pressures were on them? Was it organizational? Was it the specific situation? It's the difference between, say, forgetting to set a parking brake, that's an error, a lapse, versus deliberately disabling a safety guard because the proper procedure takes too long. That's a violation.
Okay. Let's dig into errors first then, the unintentional stuff. You said they break down further.
Yeah, two main types here, skill-based errors and mistakes. Let's tackle skill-based errors first. These are probably the most common ones we encounter day to day. ###A, skill-based errors, the familiar zone. So skill-based errors, these crop up during tasks that are super familiar, highly routine activities.
Things we do on autopilot.
Exactly. Stuff so well practiced that you don't need to consciously think about every single step. Your brain just runs the program automatically.
Like driving a car is the classic example, right? You're doing this complex thing, but your mind might be miles away planning dinner.
Perfect example. And think about that in a high-risk job.
Yeah.
A technician doing a valve check they've done literally thousands of times.
The danger being?
The danger is that because it's automatic, any little blip of distraction, a momentary lapse in concentration, can cause the execution to go wrong, even if you know exactly what you're supposed to do.
Right, so these skill-based failures, they get broken down even more.
They do, into two types, slips of action and lapses of memory. A slip of action is basically an execution failure. You intended to do the right thing, but your physical action was wrong. An unplanned deviation.
Okay, can you give some examples? The source material had quite a few specifics.
Yeah, really crucial for investigation. A slip could be doing something too early or too late in a sequence, or maybe doing the action in the wrong direction, like turning a dial clockwise when you meant counterclockwise. Big consequences sometimes.
Or doing the right thing to the wrong thing.
Exactly. Performing the right action, but on the wrong piece of equipment. You meant to adjust valve A, but you glance away for a second, and your hand goes to valve B instead. Very common in, say, control rooms with banks of identical switches. It's a physical slip, not a knowledge problem.
Okay, so that's slips. What about lapses?
Lapses of memory. These aren't physical execution errors, they're cognitive failures. You simply forget to do something, or you lose your place in a sequence.
So you might skip a step or repeat one.
Right. You might end up doing the right thing but at the wrong time because you lost track, you knew all the steps, you just blanked on step 3 after doing step 2.
And this is where we get into mitigation, right? How organizations can actually prevent these lapses.
Yes, and the focus here is really on organizational design and controls. It's not just about telling people pay attention.
Okay, so what works?
First, you have to be aggressive about minimizing distractions. Really enforce things like sterile cockpit rules or designated quiet zones during critical tasks. No chatting when someone's doing something complex.
Makes sense. Second,
Provide strong reminders. External ones, we're talking detailed checklists, tick lists, things that require a physical action, like signing off after each stage. It takes the load off the person's memory.
forces them to confirm where they are.
Exactly. And third, and this is a big one, look hard at the task design itself. If the procedure forces someone to leave their workstation mid-task, maybe to grab a tool or check a manual somewhere else, that's a built-in opportunity for a lapse.
Because when they come back.
They might forget exactly where they were. So designing the task and the workspace so the whole thing can be done start to finish without that kind of interruption is a really powerful structural fix for memory lapses. #B mistakes, thinking the wrong thing is right.
Okay, so that covers skill-based errors, the slips and lapses on autopilot. Now we shift to mistakes. How are these different?
Mistakes are, well, they're more about faulty thinking or planning. A mistake happens when the person genuinely believes they're doing the right thing, but their judgment or their understanding or how they applied a rule is actually wrong.
So it's not an execution slip-up, it's a thinking error.
Precisely. And we split these into two categories as well. Rule-based mistakes and knowledge-based mistakes.
Let's start with rule-based.
Okay, rule-based mistakes. These happen when your behavior is guided by a remembered rule or a procedure you've used before. You rely on habit.
And the danger is?
The danger is applying that familiar rule or habit when the situation has actually changed or when a different rule is needed. The habit overrides the analysis of the current situation.
The source used a really powerful example here, didn't it? The tanker driver.
Yes, that's a classic. The driver has this rule baked into his head. This specific tank takes 45 minutes to fill. It's based on years of experience.
So he ignores the high-level alarms going off.
He does. He trusts his internal rule, his habit. But what he doesn't know is that maintenance changed the pipework. They installed a bigger pipe, so now the tank fills in just 20 minutes.
So he applies the old rule
to the new situation. And the tank overflows, catastrophically, potentially. His failure wasn't a slip, like turning the wrong valve. It was applying the wrong mental rule. The alarm was there to catch exactly this, but his confidence in his rule led him to ignore the safety system.
That really shows how familiarity can lead to failure. Okay, what about the other type? Knowledge-based mistakes.
Knowledge-based mistakes. These tend to pop up when you're in totally unfamiliar territory. The situation is novel, it's complex, maybe unique, and crucially, there are no established rules or procedures to guide you.
So you can't rely on habit or a known procedure.
Nope. You have to fall back on your general knowledge, your understanding of similar situations, and try to figure out a solution from scratch. Problem solving on the fly.
And that's risky.
Very risky, because you might make the wrong call due to incomplete information. Or maybe you oversimplify things, jump to a conclusion too fast without really weighing all the options. Or sometimes the situation is just genuinely beyond your current level of understanding or training, forcing you to guess based on limited knowledge. Okay, so we've covered unintentional failures, the errors. Now we have to tackle the harder part in some ways. Violations.
The deliberate choices to break the rules.
Deliberate, yes. But, and this is really important, it's rarely about malice or wanting things to go wrong. It's usually driven by something in the system or the situation. Understanding the reason behind the violation is absolutely key to finding the right fix.
So just like errors, there are different types of violations.
3 main types we need to unpack. Hashtag tag tag A, routine violation. First up is the routine violation. This is where breaking a particular rule has just become normal. It's the standard way of working for that group or in that environment.
So it's not just one person, it's cultural.
Exactly. It's embedded. It indicates a serious disconnect between the rules on paper and how work actually gets done. Leadership might say one thing, but the operational reality is completely different.
Why does this happen? What drives routine violations?
Could be several things. Maybe workers are cutting corners just to save a bit of time or effort, perceived efficiency.
Or the rules themselves are bad.
That happens too. Maybe the rules feel too rigid, too impractical, not really designed for how the job needs to be done efficiently or even safely in some contexts.
And if management doesn't enforce the rules?
Big problem. If rules are ignored for long enough, people just assume they don't matter anymore. That lack of consistent enforcement from the top basically signals that the violation is acceptable.
And new people just learn the wrong way.
That's the really insidious part. New hires come in and they're trained by their peers. They learn that the official way isn't the real way. They learn the violations are the norm. Hashtag tag tag B, situational violation.
Okay, so that's routine cultural rule breaking. What's next?
Situational violations. These aren't habitual. They're specific reactions to factors in the immediate situation.
Like what kind of factors?
Things like extreme time pressure coming down from management. Or maybe the equipment is poorly designed, making the proper procedure incredibly awkward or slow. Could be extreme weather conditions, or having to use tools that aren't quite right for the job, forcing you to improvise.
So the worker faces this unexpected challenge.
Exactly. And in that moment, they make a judgment call. They look at the official rule and think, following this rule right now is either unsafe or it just won't work. It won't achieve the goal.
So they break the rule to cope with the situation.
Right. They choose to violate it because they believe it's the only way to manage the situation safely or get the critical task done under those specific constraints.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine a maintenance procedure says you must use a specific certified crane for a heavy lift, standard procedure. But the certified crane breaks down unexpectedly, and there's a critical deadline, maybe a plant shutdown window, that's closing fast.
Okay, intense pressure.
Right. So the team, under that pressure, decides to use a different, maybe uncertified lifting method. They jury-rig something. They know they're breaking the rule about the certified crane.
But the situation of the broken crane, the deadline, makes the official rule seem impossible or counterproductive.
Precisely. That's a situational violation.
Yeah.
Driven by the context. Hashtag tag CC. Exceptional violation.
Okay, routine, situational. What's the third type?
The exceptional violation. This one's rarer, but often happens in very high-stakes moments. It can occur during normal operations, but often it's in emergencies.
What defines it?
It happens when things are clearly going wrong, seriously wrong. And the workers involved believe they have to break a rule even knowing it's risky to prevent something much worse, like a major disaster, or to achieve some absolutely critical positive outcome.
So in their mind, following the rule is actually the path to failure.
That's the perception, yes. Following the procedure leads to disaster. Breaking the rule might save the day.
Wow. Here's where it gets really interesting then, because that's not just breaking a rule, it's making a really difficult judgment call under immense pressure.
Exactly. It involves a high-stakes, sometimes even moral choice. The worker is consciously weighing the known risk of violating the rule against the perceived potentially catastrophic risk of following the rule in that specific abnormal crisis situation.
It requires incredible situational awareness.
And often a real commitment to achieving the right outcome, even if it means taking a personal risk by deviating from the book.
Okay, we've built this really detailed map of how things go wrong, the errors, the violations. Now let's shift gears and look at the process that often sits underneath these failures, decision-making.
Right, because many mistakes, and basically all violations, stem from a decision someone made. So understanding how decisions should be made helps us see where they go off the rails.
And at its core, a decision is just choosing, right?
Simply making a choice from two or more alternatives. That's the basic definition.
So the source material lays out a structured process for effective decision-making, like an ideal model.
Yes, a 7-step process. It represents the rational ideal. And understanding this ideal is powerful because it lets us pinpoint where real-world decision-making, our decision-making, often falls short, which, as we said, is often the root of knowledge-based mistakes.
Okay, let's walk through these 7 steps. Step 1.
Step 1. Identify the decision or problem. Sounds obvious, but you first have to clearly recognize that a choice needs to be made or a problem exists that needs solving. Let's use a safety example. Maybe we need a better system for handling and storing chemicals across the entire site.
Okay, problem identified. Step 2.
Step 2. Gather information. This is the investigation phase. You need to collect all the relevant data. What are the current incident stats? What are the actual storage needs? What regulations do we have to meet? What do the people actually using the chemicals say? What systems are even available out there?
Get all the facts. Then step 3.
Step 3. Identify decision criteria. What factors actually matter for this decision to be successful? What defines a good chemical handling system for us?
So, things like?
Could be. How well does it integrate with our existing inventory system? How much training will people need? Is it ergonomically sound for the users? What's the maximum storage capacity? How resistant is it to the specific chemicals we use? What kind of long-term vendor support is included? You list everything that's important.
Okay, got the criteria. Step 4.
Step 4. Weigh the evidence, allocate weights to criteria. This is critical. Not all criteria are equally important. You need to prioritize.
Separate the must-haves from the nice-to-haves.
Exactly. Maybe chemical resistance is absolutely non-negotiable. That gets a weight of 10 out of 10. Maybe vendor support contracts are important but secondary. That gets a 5. This weighting forces you to focus on what really drives the outcome you need for the organization, not just, the flashiest feature or the loudest voice in the room.
Right. Step 5.
Step 5. Develop alternatives. Now you list all the possible solutions, every viable option.
Don't just jump to the first idea.
No, be exhaustive. Maybe it's buying system A from vendor X or system B from vendor Y, or maybe it's developing our own system in-house, or contracting a specialist third-party logistics company to handle it all, or perhaps combining some existing smaller solutions we already have. Get all the realistic possibilities on the table.
Okay, alternatives listed. Step 6.
Step 6. Analyze and select an alternative. This is the rigorous evaluation. You take each alternative from step 5 and score it against each criterion from step 3 using the weights you assigned in step 4.
So it's quite methodical.
It should be. You calculate a total score for each alternative. The one with the highest score, the one that best meets your prioritized criteria, is, rationally speaking, the best choice. This structured approach is designed to minimize gut feelings and biases.
And finally, step 7.
Step 7. Implement and review your decision. You put the chosen solution into action. But crucially, you don't stop there. You immediately set up a process to evaluate. Did it work? Did the new chemical system actually lead to fewer spills or injuries? Did it meet the capacity needs we identified?
Closing the loop.
Absolutely. This feedback is essential. It's the only way to know if your decision was truly effective and to learn how to make better decisions next time. So That 7-step process. That's the gold standard, the ideal rational path.
But reality often intervenes,
Yes.
right?
Always. The type of problem you're facing and our own built-in cognitive limits really dictate how closely we can actually follow that ideal process. Hashtag A, problem and decision types. We can think about problems as being either structured or unstructured. Structured problems are the familiar ones.
These we've seen before.
Yeah. The goals are clear. We've probably dealt with something similar in the past. The information needed is usually available and easy to define.
Like processing a standard expense claim, maybe.
Good example. And a structured problem typically leads to what we call a programmed decision.
Programmed.
Meaning it's repetitive, routine. There's usually a standard way to handle it, a company policy, a checklist, a standard operating procedure. Most routine safety checks or permit sign-offs fall into this category. You just follow the program.
Okay, and the opposite.
Unstructured problems. These are new, they're unusual, maybe the information is ambiguous or incomplete. There's no ready-made solution.
Like responding to a completely novel equipment failure or a sudden change in regulations.
Exactly. These require custom-made solutions. And an unstructured problem demands a non-programmed decision.
Meaning?
It's unique. It's non-recurring. It requires a specific, tailored response. Maybe you set up a special task force, commission new research, develop a whole new procedure. These are often the really high-stakes decisions where the potential for error is significant. Hashtag B, decision-making approaches.
So the type of problem dictates the type of decision.
Yeah.
What about how we actually approach making the decision? The ideal is pure rationality.
Right. The concept of rationality assumes decision makers are, well, perfect robots in a sense, perfectly logical, objective. They define the problem flawlessly, identify all possible alternatives, have a crystal clear goal, and always pick the option that absolutely maximizes the benefit for the organization, with no personal bias creeping in.
Sounds nice.
It's a nice theoretical benchmark, but the reality for all of us is what Herbert Simon called bounded rationality.
Bounded, meaning limited.
Exactly. We try to be rational, but our ability to process information is fundamentally limited or bounded. We can't possibly know or analyze every single alternative, especially under time pressure or with complex issues. Our brains just don't have that capacity.
So what do we do instead of maximizing the outcome?
We satisfice. It's a blend of satisfy and suffice. We don't search endlessly for the absolute best possible solution. Instead, we tend to choose the first alternative we find that meets the minimum requirements, the one that satisfactorily solves the problem.
The good enough solution.
Pretty much. Why spend weeks analyzing option E if option C does the job adequately right now? This explains so much organizational behavior, including why sometimes safety standards might be good enough rather than truly best in class. It's often a satisfying decision.
Okay, so there's rationality, the ideal. Bounded rationality, the reality. What else?
Then there's intuition decision-making. This is relying on your experience, your feelings, that accumulated judgment, your gut feeling.
Can that be good?
Sometimes, especially for experienced people in familiar domains, it can be very fast. But it's also highly dependent on the quality and relevance of that past experience. And it's incredibly vulnerable to all the cognitive biases we're going to talk about soon. Hashtag C, decision-making conditions.
Okay, one more layer here. The conditions under which we make the decision. This seems to be about how much information we have.
Exactly. The ideal condition is certainty. You know, with 100% confidence, the outcome of every single alternative choice.
Which basically never happens in the real world, right?
Very rarely, outside of maybe simple math problems or highly controlled situations. More often, we operate under conditions of risk.
Risk meaning we don't know the outcome for sure, but we can estimate the odds.
Precisely. As a manager, you can estimate the likelihood, the probability, of different outcomes resulting from a particular choice. This is where tools like risk assessments, probability analysis, decision trees come in. We know the possible results, and we have some idea of how likely each one is.
And the toughest condition.
Uncertainty. Here, you have such limited information that you can't even estimate the probabilities of the outcomes. You're flying blind to some extent.
So what do managers do under uncertainty? Just guess.
They often have to rely more on intuition, hunches, or they might adopt specific strategies to try and manage the unknown. The source material highlights 3 interesting ones.
Okay.
First is the Maximex approach. This is the eternal optimist. You look at all the alternatives, identify the best possible outcome for each one, and then choose the alternative that offers the absolute maximum possible payoff.
High risk, high reward.
Definitely. Think big market bets, radical innovation. Then there's the opposite, maximin.
Maximize the minimum.
Exactly. This is the pessimist's approach, or maybe the cautious realists. You look at all alternatives, identify the worst possible outcome for each one, and then you choose the alternative whose worst outcome is the least bad.
So you're protecting the downside.
It's fundamentally about minimizing potential losses. This is often the core logic behind very conservative risk management in safety-critical industries. Choose the option where failure is least catastrophic.
And the third one.
Minimax. This one's a bit different. It's about minimizing your maximum regret.
Regret.
Yeah. You think, okay, if I choose option A and it goes wrong, how much will I regret that decision? What about option B? You choose the path where the potential for future regret, maybe politically or personally, is minimized.
That sounds like it could lead to covering your back rather than making the best objective choice.
It certainly can. It might lead to decisions that are safe politically or easy to defend, rather than the ones that are technically optimal or even the safest in the long run.
So especially when you're facing those unstructured problems under risk or uncertainty, leaders rarely make these calls completely alone, do they?
Usually not. And how the decision gets made within a group, the authority structure, has a huge impact, not just on the quality of the decision, but also on whether people actually buy into it and follow through, which in safety is absolutely critical.
Okay, the sources laid out 4 main ways groups or leaders make decisions. Let's break those down. First is command.
Command decision. Simple. One person decides. The boss makes the call.
From
Speed. It's fast, it's decisive.
Okay.
Big cons, you only get one perspective, so it can be really ill-informed. And crucially, it totally sacrifices buy-in from the team. People might resent it or just not commit to it, which is dangerous if it's a safety procedure.
Okay, what's next? Consultative.
Consultative. Here, the leader still makes the final call, but they get input from others first. They ask for advice, opinions, data.
So faster than full group discussion, but more informed than command.
Generally, yes. It's fairly quick, and you benefit from multiple perspectives. The pitfalls are making sure you consult the right people, the ones with the relevant knowledge, and ensuring the feedback you get is actually useful and honest, not just people telling you what they think you want to hear.
Right. Then there's the big one, consensus.
Consensus. This is true group decision-making. Everyone involved has to agree or at least be willing to live with and support the final decision.
Pros of that must be significant.
Huge. When it works, consensus can produce incredibly high-quality, robust decisions because you've hammered it out from all angles. And the buy-in is immense. People feel ownership.
The downsides.
Also huge. It can be incredibly slow, very time-consuming. It requires a high degree of openness, honesty, and trust within the group. And if it's managed poorly, the arguments and friction needed to reach consensus can actually damage working relationships.
Tricky balance. And the last one, delegated.
Delegated. Here, the manager basically hands off the decision entirely to someone else or to a team. You figure this out and implement it. It empowers people, shows trust, develops their skills, and it frees up the manager's time.
Risks.
The outcome totally depends on how clear the initial guidance was, and, frankly, on the competence and judgment of the person or team you delegated to. It requires a really high level of trust.
So thinking about safety again, that trade-off you mentioned, speed versus buy-in, seems really relevant here.
Absolutely. A quick command decision might seem efficient for rolling out a new safety rule, but if the workforce wasn't consulted and doesn't understand the why or feel it's practical...
You risk those routine or situational violations we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Because there's no buy-in.
Exactly. Whereas using a consultative or even a consensus approach, while slower, builds that understanding and credibility. If the people on the front line actually had some input into designing the new procedure, they're far more likely to follow it and even champion it. Okay, so we've got the ideal process, we've got the context and group dynamics, but now we hit the really slippery part, the human brain itself.
The shortcuts it takes.
Precisely. Our brains didn't evolve to run 7-step rational decision models perfectly every time. They evolved to make quick judgments based on limited information. We rely on mental shortcuts, heuristics.
Which save time and effort.
They do. They're often very efficient. But they also lead to systematic, predictable errors in judgment. These are the cognitive traps, the biases.
And the source material listed quite a few of these. Seems crucial to understand them if you're involved in risk assessment or investigating why something went wrong.
Absolutely critical, because these biases affect everyone, no matter how smart or experienced. We can maybe group them to make them a bit easier to digest. Let's try. Ego biases, memory and attention biases, and maybe system and filtering biases.
Okay, let's start with ego and confidence.
First one, a big one, overconfidence bias. Basically, relying too much on your own skills, your own judgment, your own experience.
The feeling of, I've done this 1,000 times, I know what I'm doing, I'll be fine.
Exactly, you will do it perfectly. In safety contexts, this is incredibly dangerous. It leads experienced people to skip steps, bypass safety checks, ignore procedures because they believe their personal skill makes them immune to error. It undermines all the engineered safety layers.
Then there's the self-serving bias.
Ah, yes. Toxic for learning. This is our tendency to take credit for successes. My leadership fixed that problem, but blame external factors for failures. The equipment failed, or the team wasn't trained properly.
So success is me, failure is something else.
Pretty much. And if leaders consistently do this, it kills psychological safety. No one will admit mistakes or raise concerns that they know they'll just get blamed, and the organization never learns from its failures.
And related to that, hindsight bias.
The dreaded, I knew it all along effect. Once an outcome is known, especially a negative one, we mistakenly believe it was obvious and predictable beforehand.
Which makes incident investigations really difficult.
Devastatingly so. Because it leads investigators to judge the decisions people made before the accident with the perfect clarity of knowing after the accident exactly what went wrong. It's an unfair standard and prevents understanding the real pressures and uncertainties people faced at the time.
Okay, moving on. Biases related to memory and what grabs our attention.
Right. First, immediate gratification bias. This is choosing options that offer quick, easy, low-cost results now, even if a different option would be better in the long run.
Like opting for a cheap, quick fix instead of a proper repair.
Or in safety management, maybe choosing a short, inexpensive online training module because it ticks a box quickly, rather than investing in a more complex, expensive, but ultimately necessary system overhaul. The immediate visible result wins out over the slower, perhaps less visible, but more impactful long-term solution.
Okay. What about availability bias?
This is where we overweight information that's easily recalled, usually because it's recent, vivid, or emotionally charged.
So if there was a big fire recently.
Exactly. If there was a major fire last month, everyone's talking about it, it was dramatic. Managers might pour resources into fire prevention, maybe overinvesting there, while neglecting other risks like perhaps chronic musculoskeletal injuries from poor ergonomics, which might actually be causing more harm overall but are less dramatic and less available in their minds.
And randomness bias.
This is our tendency to see patterns or meaning in random events where none actually exist. Superstition is a form of this.
Or in a work context.
Maybe assuming a particular machine only breaks down when a specific technician, maybe one who is often blamed for things, is on shift. You create a causal link based on a random coincidence, potentially leading to unfair blame when the issue is purely mechanical or systemic.
Okay, final cluster. How we frame information, what we let in.
Yes, the anchoring effect. This is where we rely too heavily on the very first piece of information we receive.
Like the first price quoted or the initial estimate.
Exactly. If an initial risk assessment labels a hazard as low risk, that initial assessment can strongly anchor all future discussions. It becomes much harder for people to objectively evaluate new evidence suggesting the risk might actually be high because they're mentally anchored to that first judgment.
Then selective perception bias.
This is seeing what you expect to see. Your own preconceptions, your beliefs, your attitudes filter the information you take in. If a manager fundamentally believes that safety procedures slow down production,
They'll only notice the times when that seems true.
precisely, they'll selectively perceive evidence that confirms their existing belief while ignoring or downplaying instances where safety measures actually prevented costly accidents or improved efficiency in the long run.
How is that different from confirmation bias?
It's subtle but important. Selective perception is more passive filtering. Confirmation bias is more active. It's not just noticing information that fits your beliefs. It's actively seeking out information that confirms what you already think and actively avoiding or discrediting information that challenges it.
So if you launch a new safety program, you might only ask for feedback from the people you know already like it.
Classic confirmation bias. You're seeking validation, not objective truth.
Okay. Framing bias.
This is all about how the choice or problem is presented. The frame matters as much or more than the actual content.
Like the half-full, half-empty glass.
Exactly. If you frame a necessary safety upgrade as a cost or an expense, you'll get resistance. If you frame the exact same upgrade as an investment in reliability or a measure to reduce long-term insurance premiums, it might get approved much more easily. Same facts, different frame, potentially different decision.
Representation bias.
This is basically stereotyping situations, seeing patterns or similarities based on superficial resemblance even when the underlying situations are different.
Like assuming this equipment failure is just like the one we had last year.
Right. You diagnose a complex, potentially unique problem as just another one of those, and apply a standard fix that worked last time, but which is completely wrong for the current different underlying cause. You're matching based on representation, not deep analysis.
And lastly, sunk costs error.
The throwing good money after bad bias.
Yeah.
This is making decisions based on past investments, time, money, effort already spent, rather than on future prospects.
So refusing to abandon a failing project because you've already invested so much in it.
Exactly. A manager might keep pouring resources into an outdated, ineffective safety system simply because we've already spent 5 years and millions of dollars on it, instead of cutting their losses and investing that future money in a new, better system that actually offers superior protection going forward. The past investment irrationally dictates the future decision.
Wow. That's a lot of ways for our thinking to go wrong.
It really is. And what this whole list of biases tells us is profound. Even if a leader tries their best to follow that rational 7-step process, these cognitive traps, these heuristics, can sneak in and derail the outcome at almost any stage when you're gathering information, when you're weighing criteria, when you're evaluating alternatives, even when you're implementing the choice.
So human judgment is just inherently fragile.
It is, which means for any system where the stakes are high, you must build in deliberate structural checks and balances specifically designed to catch or counteract these predictable cognitive failings. You can't just rely on people trying harder not to be biased. #HagOutro.
So reflecting on this whole deep dive, it's clear that human failure isn't just one thing, it's this complex landscape.
Absolutely. It stretches all the way from that simple, momentary, unintentional slip-up, a skill-based error you might fix with a better checklist, through to the more complex, knowledge-based mistake that needs better training or clearer information.
All the way to those deliberate violations, whether they're routine corner cutting driven by culture, or situational choices forced by pressure, or even those rare exceptional violations in a crisis.
And the safety leader's job ultimately isn't about eliminating human error entirely. That's impossible given everything we've discussed about bounded rationality and biases.
So what is the role then?
It's about designing systems, procedures, and cultures that anticipate these different types of human failure and mitigate the risks associated with them. It's about making the safe way the easy, natural, and rational way to do things, recognizing how humans actually think and behave.
We spent a lot of time setting up that rational ideal, that 7-step process, only to kind of tear it down with bounded rationality and all those biases.
Which brings us, I think, to a really pointed final thought for you, the listener.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think about your own organization. Look at its most critical procedures, operational ones, safety ones. How many of those rules and procedures were truly designed to maximize the best possible outcome following something like that rational process? Versus how many were actually designed just to find the quickest or the easiest or the most familiar path that was good enough at the time. And thinking about the decisions you're facing right now, today, what single cognitive bias? Maybe it's anchoring on old data. Maybe it's the availability of a recent incident. Maybe it's confirming what you already believe. What bias do you suspect might be subtly shaping your most critical upcoming decision?
Food for thought indeed. We've given you the taxonomy, the models, the biases. Now it's time to use them to look critically at the reality around you.
Go diagnose.
Catch you next time for the next deep dive.